بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. Today, inshallah ta'ala, or tonight in your side of the world, we would like to explore a little bit of the life of one of the greatest imam in history of Islam, a great scholar, known as Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala, even though very few know his name, because Abu Hanifa is not a name. It's a kunya, it's a nickname. Abu, it means the father. Hanifa, it's not his daughter, it's not his son, his name Hanifa. No, Hanifa, according to some of the scholars who wrote his biography, means in the delicate of the people of Iraq, dawatul hibr is the ink, the container where you put the ink. So that's the Hanifa. And he was called the Abu Hanifa, the father of the ink, because he's committed to learning and going to schools and studying and writing, and basically to show how his commitment was towards knowledge and seeking knowledge. Abu Hanifa himself has a very famous statement that it's worth to start with. He said, إن النظر في سير الرجال أحب إلي من النظر في مسائلهم. I always love to read the biography of the scholars more than just reading their fatwas and their fiqh opinions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught, then he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the story of the people before us so we can learn from it, so we can benefit from it. لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ. In their stories, there is a great lessons to be learned. I always like to say as well, whenever I talk about anyone in the past, that it's never about Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa died, he is with his Lord, and we expect him to be, inshallah ta'ala, in Jannat al-Na'im. It's not about him, he already done. He did his share. It's about us. So when we study the past, we study it so we can see the future, so we can plan for the future. Doomed those who do not learn from the past. Mark Twain once said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I 100% agree with that. History rhymes. And by the way, this is not him saying that. This is something that we can see clearly by reading the Quran. Why Allah gave us the story of the children of Israel, the story of Nuh, the story of Ibrahim, the story of the people before us. And the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us that you will follow the footsteps of the nations before you. سُنَنَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. So that's why? Because of this fact that, history rhymes. History repeats itself. I don't want, when we study the history or the paragraph of the scholars, just to be living in the past and we forget about the present and we don't plan for the future. No, we learn, we take from their lives for our lives. We learn from their stories so can make our stories. And that's the whole purpose of studying the biography of scholar. So I really commend and recognize and appreciate this series that you guys having in your university and with the Muslim Student Association of having a series talking about the scholars. But we make sure it's not about how good he was. It's about what I can learn from his life that can inspire me to be a better person. Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, it's important at least to know what his name is. His name is An-Nu'man. An-Nu'man, the son of Thabit. And there were a little bit of debates and back and forth talk about what is his lineage goes back to. Some said he was children of a slave, that they were brought to in Iraq, Libani Taym Abdullah ibn Tha'laba. And they said he's originally from Kabul. Some people from Babylon, north of Iraq. Nasa, Turmud, Nasa, which is Nasa'i from, Turmud, Tirmidhi from, Al-Anbar, which is north of Iraq. You see, there's a lot of talk about where he's from. What is so important about that? And this is unfortunately was used by some enemy of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah to try to kind of downgrade him, that he's not an Arab, he doesn't know Arabic language, he's not like a fluent in Arabic, and all this is obviously not correct. Or some racist remark was made by some people who did not like Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. But regardless, Abu Hanifa himself said, as Ismail ibn Hamad, Ibn Abi Hanifa, so this is his grandson, saying that in relation to Abu Hanifa's grandfather and father, he said they are from the children of Persia, and they were free men, they were never slaves. We never were slaves ever. And his grandfather was born and went to Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu arda, and he was young. This is the grandfather of the child of Abu Hanifa. So that means the father of Abu Hanifa went to Imam Ali radiallahu anhu arda, and Imam Ali radiallahu anhu, he made barakah, he made dua, he prayed that Allah bless him and bless his children. And he said, and that's why we think that our father, Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, the great Imam Nu'man, was the outcome of that dua, that the prayer of Ali radiallahu anhu, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him. Anyway, it doesn't really matter if he descended from slaves or not. What matter, not what his father was, what matter what he was. Rahimahullah ta'ala radiyallahu anhu. It didn't matter to him if he's an Arab or not Arab. In a society at that time where the Arab came and just conquered the world and, ruling, and, where the Prophet ﷺ came from. But Islam never recognized the race or to favor one race over another. We are all, and Nabi ﷺ said clearly, there is no difference between red or black or white, no difference between Arab and non-Arab except with taqwa. History have documented for us greater scholar than Abu Hanifa, have a greater status in Islam than Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, and they were not they were slaves themselves, or their parents were slaves, and later on basically all of them got free, like Al-Hasan al-Basri, Ata, Tawus, Salim, Mawla ibn Umar. Many of those great imams in ilm and fiqh and fatwa, they were necessarily to be an Arab. That's a society did not treat people this way. And also there's a great lessons for us that it doesn't matter where you're coming from, what your family are. Education raise your level, elevate you. That's what ilm does. It makes you in a very high position. The Khalifa Harun al-Rashid, when he entered, and it's been reported by several other Khulafa as well, when he entered Mecca and the people were coming to see him and to be around him. He's the Khalifa, has the money, the wealth, the power, you name it. You can imagine. And he noticed that were a much bigger crowd around someone else. Then when the Khalifa asked, how come I'm like the Khalifa and I'm the descendant of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I am this and that, I'm coming here to Mecca and somebody had bigger crowd walking around him than me? Then his aunt said, that's the true honor, what you see over there. This is the great scholar, so and so. Al-ilm elevate the person, make you a very special. That's why this is something to keep in mind. And by the way, ilm al-sharia is one thing, but also all kind of education, I do believe, all kind of knowledge will raise the person. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of his greatest qualities and one of the greatest attributes is al-ilm, that he is al-alim subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was born 80 Hijri, okay? And some said, no, 61. So, but 80 is the strongest opinion during the Abdul Malik ibn Marwan time, in the Umayyads time. So I'm saying this because you understand where Abu Hanifa coming from. Abu Hanifa considered one of the Sighar al-Tabi'een, the youngest among the successors, in the same level of another great scholar, Al-A'mash. Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, that's why Abu Hanifa used to say, when the hadith comes from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is above my head. When the statement of the Sahaba comes, it is here, right here. But when the statement of the Tabi'een comes, they are men and we are men. In another word, they have their opinions and I have my opinions. Why? Because he's in the same level. He lived in the same era. So please don't come in the 21st century and say they are men and we are men, and they have their opinion and I have my opinion. You talk about someone in that level, on the same level of the Tabi'een, rahimahullah ta'ala. As you can imagine, if somebody from Persia, when the historian described him, we're going to be look quite different than the pure Arabic look. That's why they said he's like very handsome man, fair skin, but he has tan in him. And he took good care of his appearance. And this is something very noticeable about Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. The people can smell his perfume from a distance. And he's in a taller side, not very tall, but he's in the taller side. Even his son, he said, my father was a tall man, kana tawilan. And he is very eloquent. And his tone of voice is very soothing. كان من يعني أعذبهم نغمة وأبينهم عما في نفسي. And he has this ability of expressing himself very, very well. Why I'm saying this? Because these are gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to him, have given to him. And we have so many other gifts been given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many of our talents are nothing but gifts from Allah to us. But Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he used these gifts and he used it in a way that he basically returned the gift back to Allah in a form of ibadah and ilm and da'wah and contributions. These talents, okay, are gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us. What we do with it are basically our gifts back to Allah Azza wa Jal. Also, another point here is important to be recognized, that it's not enough to be talented person. It's not enough that Allah give you that. Even the look has an impact, because when you have that, good feature, that instantly give you the first, first look advantage, first sight, first moment, it give you that advantage. And your voice, if it is deep and soothing and strong, and you have this ability to express yourself very clearly. And by the way, I found it very hard to find people knows how to express themselves correctly. I believe one of the biggest problem in communication, that we don't know how to express our feelings, our thoughts, our ideas properly. If you can master that, if you're gifted in that, you're just an amazing leader instantly, an amazing teacher, an amazing, any area, manager, leader, you name it. So he had this. What I want to say also, this is why I'm saying this about him, is to show you that it's not about what you got, it's what you do with it. It's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving you with it, what you using it. So many of us been giving so many gifts from their Lords, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we never open our gifts. We never open these boxes. We never looked what's inside it. We never looked at our inside ourselves and utilized these gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given us. Khan rahimahullah sit in Masjid al-Kufa, and on him قلنسوة سوداء طويلة. He will wear a type of قلنسوة. It is like a type of helmet that you put black and long. One time, and it should show you he was very rich, rahimahullah ta'ala. He was known as al-Khazzaz because he used to sell silk, and he inherited a good portion of wealth from his father, rahimahullah ta'ala, and used to sell things and makes a lot of money out of it, especially in silk. One time, another Ibn Muhammad gave him his robe, kisa, and it's like a robe that you put in the shoulder for Abu Hanifa to use in his talk or his class. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, man, I was embarrassed wearing this. It is so bad quality. He's so used to a very fancy clothes that when he gets something like a little bit of not that high grade, he himself felt uncomfortable. And Al-Kasai said, I bought it by khamas dananir, 5 dinars, 5 pieces of gold, thinking that this is a lot, you know. It's like when you go and you get something from, like, you know, Mark Spencer or something like that, you think, oh, mashallah, I got like something fancy. He doesn't know that there is way much bigger stores and fancier stores than that. Anyway, so he said, later on, I saw what he wear, Abu Hanifa, and he said that at least worth 30 dinar, 30 pieces of gold. He thought 5 is a lot. His 5 is a lot, but he realized the difference. What I'm trying to say is this man lived in a very luxurious life. Can Hamad, his son, Hamad, he named his son after his teacher, Hamad, as you will know now. So he said, my father, كان كثير التعطر. He liked to put perfumes a lot, most of the time. قليل الكلام, he speaks little. Most of his talk is answering people's questions. كان أكثر وقارا وسمتا وحلما منه. No one can match him when it comes to how respected he was when he's teaching, when he's sitting around his students, and his look, his appearance. When you look at him, you have this good vibe from him, and very patient with people. Sharik said, طويل الصمت كثير العقل. He remains silent for a long time, like when he's with people, around people. كثير العقل, his intelligence is very intelligent person. And when you talk about his character, one of the things that's so noticeable about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, his great, he was a great caretaker of his mother. He used to carry her and on his back and take her or help her or carry her on a mule or something like that, all the way to the other side of the town, so she can ask questions to Amr ibn Dhar on the other side of Al-Kufa. And many of these questions, he knows the answer already. And sometimes even Amr ibn Dhar will ask him, what are the answers? So he will tell him in his ear, so he will not embarrass his mother. One of the things that everybody talks about it when it comes to Abu Hanifa, with all this luxurious life, with this all wealth and a possession of wealth in his hand, he has a quality that is kind of interesting, that you put it hand to hand with him being a businessman, a very successful businessman, with him being in trade and sell, like he sells his sells to people, materials and stuff like that. The quality is al-wara. You know what's al-wara? The best way to define al-wara, it is to leave the things that it might harm you in the akhirah. So al-wara is to leave the things that it might harm you in the next life, and hereafter. So it's not for sure, but it might. So that's why I leave it. And it's amazing, when you're in business, when you're dealing with people, it's hard to avoid these things. You know, tons of questions we get every day. Sheikh, I'm in business. You can't say, no, I have to. And tons of situations we said, the circumstances make me do this. So for him to be so known of being wari, a person possesses a great deal of wara, that's interesting that he combined between these two. To the extent Abdullah ibn Mubarak, when he came to Al-Kufa, he said, I came to this new town. Abdullah ibn Mubarak comes from where? From up north in Iran. So he descends down to Iraq and he goes to Al-Kufa, which is very well known because Al-Kufa was a place where around 400 companions settled. In Al-Kufa, the whole ilm of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu arda. So Abdullah ibn Mubarak coming to seek knowledge there. But it's interesting. Do you know what he asked about? He said, سألت عن أورع أهل الكوفة. I ask who's the one who has most wara among the ulama of Al-Kufa, which shows also an interesting point. What kind of quality they're looking for their teachers? Because Salaf rahimahullah, they used to learn this taqwa, this wara, this righteousness before the information. So he said and asked, who is the one who is the most person has wara in the city? Then they told him Abu Hanifa. No debate over it. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad said, كان Abu Hanifa a faqih, well known with fiqh, well known with wara, well known with wasi' al-mal, an absolute, he's so rich, and anybody will come to him, he will be so good and generous with his guests and people who come to visit him. And he has so much patience when it comes to teaching. He would be teaching students in the daytime, in the nighttime. But in the night, there was something good about his night, that he spent most of his night praying. And he said, Qalil al-kalam, he doesn't talk too much until there is a questions come to him about halal and haram. And he said, he also so good in directing people to do what is good. This is an interesting quality. كان حسنا يدل الناس على الحق. يعني he likes to invite people to do what is correct, what is right, to stand forward for the truth. He will open doors for them. He'll inspire them to do what is good. It's not only he waits for people to ask him. It's not only that he cares about himself only. He cares about other people to be good as well. Hariban min mal sultan. He doesn't like to take any gift from government. Shafi rahimahullah, once, Shafi rahimahullah, born in the same year Abu Hanifa died, 150 Hijri. They said one candle off and one candle on. So Shafi rahimahullah, born in the same year Abu Hanifa died. So he hears about him. Then he asked once his Sheikh Imam Malik. He said, have you ever seen Abu Hanifa? قال نعم, I've seen him. I've seen a man, if he wants to convince you that this pillar, which is made of what? Can you imagine that time? Made of like bricks or made of like trees, trunk of trees. He said if he would tell you that this pillar that you see with your own eyes made of bricks is made of gold, he would have convinced you. And you wouldn't, he would win that argument. Which means he's have this ability to debate. That's what Imam Malik rahimahullah. And Malik is who's Malik? Malik, one of the great scholars in Islam. And Hanifa rahimahullah known of being so patient. Okay? That's why there's so many fitan happen in his time, so many problems, confusion, debates, innovations, a lot of changes, political changes, economic changes, but he was very forbearing, very patient. He doesn't rush to make decisions, rahimahullah ta'ala. قال Ibn Mubarak and Yazid ibn Harun, and those people, just to value their statement, these two people have met hundreds and hundreds of scholars. I'm talking about scholars like Abu Hanifa and bigger or same level. So for them to say, we have never seen someone who have hilm more than him, he have patience and forbearing more than Abu Hanifa, that means a lot. Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala, used to recite this verse a lot, as one of his students said, فَبَشِّرْ عِبَادِ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. A glad tidings to my servant, those who, when they hear the statements, or they hear any statement, they will follow the best of it. In Surah Al-Zumar, verse 17. Abu Hanifa, he used to comment and he said, that should be the way. He said, مَنْ ضَاقَ بِنَا صَدْرُهُ فَإِنَّ قُلُوبَنَا قَدِ اتَّسَعَتْ لَهُ. If sometimes I don't like what somebody said, so my intellect or my whatever, that I have made me judge that person negative way, my heart can accommodate that person because there is love, there is brotherhood. Once Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, just to show how patient he was in his class. Then somebody interrupted the class and he said bad things about Abu Hanifa. You are this, you are that. He didn't look at him. He didn't answer him. He just, he continued his teaching. And he said to his students, nobody touch him. I want you to imagine if this happened in your masjid, okay, with your sheikh. I'm saying this to those brothers and sisters who get attacked sometimes online and feel like so bad. You know what? The first time, this is the first one. So this is in the class directly. He starts saying bad things about him. And he said to students, nobody replied to him. When the class finished, this guy didn't finish. Like every 5 minutes, you this, far away from the circle or the class. keep saying bad words and cursing him. Then Abu Hanifa finished the class and he went to his house, and the guy followed him. Can you imagine, in the street following him? You this, you that. Then he reached his house, and before he opened the door and entered, he looked at the guy. This is the first time now to have a direct conversation. He said, "Are you done? Is everything in your heart against me? You have said it, so now you can be free and khalas, clean your heart. If there's anything left in your heart, just said it. So you didn't need to do this again." The man felt shamed and he left. Nothing. A man said to Abu Hanifa once, "Ittaqillah, fear Allah." He said, Yazid ibn Kumayt, he said, I saw the Imam, his face changed, and he looked down and he was thinking about what this man said. This man was just rude to him. It's not just, it's in public saying to him. Then he raised his head and he said, "You're right. People need all the time someone to tell them that. Fear Allah, to remind them of that." You know, one of the things that commonly been said, that he is tawilu samt, he remains silent for a long time. Is this a virtue? It could be and could be not. Here it's a virtue. They mean he doesn't talk about things that's not beneficial. He doesn't talk about, things that doesn't concern him. It means he listened to people. So that's a virtue. But please don't understand this tawila something and he doesn't talk, because you know what? Sometimes this drives you crazy. You're around people, they don't talk. About father who don't talk, about a mother who don't talk, about kids, they don't talk to their parents. You go to the car and he's not talking to you. It hurts. That's not a virtue. Okay. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was an ascetic, zahid, okay, and wari', but still he dressed well. He smells so good. He used good perfumes, fancy clothes. That doesn't contradict you being religious, you being sheikh, you being practicing Muslim. There is no contradiction between the two. Two things, if you have them, you're so lucky. You should be grateful to Allah, thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time, which is a good understanding of the religion, so a good aql, and a good tongue, an ability to speak. Not only to represent yourself well, but also you know how to talk to people. The tone of your voice is some tone of voice is so annoying. I don't know about you guys, but there's some speakers, they do good, but I can't take them. I have to, if it's written, I'll just read it. But it's so annoying, the tone of their voice. Some people are just I can't do that. Even some people who read Quran, I can't just listen to them. It just bother me. It's not soothing. But this is, if Allah give you these two, that you have this nice tone of voice, you know how to talk, you know how to speak, you know how to articulate your points very well. You are, and also not only that, but also your thought process are excellent. You know how to basically to put the points and how to explain things clearly. If Allah give you this as zakat, which is purity of the heart and religiosity, then az-zakat, being intelligent and being talented, that's just amazing gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make sure that you take full advantage of it in the good way. It is important for the student of knowledge to have waqar. Everybody talk about Imam Abu Hanifa, that he's very well respected. That's why he doesn't talk too much. He doesn't talk about things that doesn't concern of him. It's important when you became, especially if you have the Quran, especially, it hurts me when I see half of the Quran acts like someone, Al-Quran is not in his heart. The way he play, the way I'm not saying don't have game, don't have like fun, but the words that you use, the language that you use, the way you carry yourself in public. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah, his mother cleaned him and said, hey, you can't be playing in the mud and doing all this. Now you memorize the hadith, now you memorize the Quran. You have to look nice, you have to dress well. And I know this is something can change from one culture to another, I'm not expecting from somebody like 7 years old in 21st century to act like the 7 years old, like Shafi, for example, in his time. I understand the difference. I understand somebody in Manchester than somebody in Houston, Texas, or in America, or in Saudi Arabia, or in Egypt, or some village in the mountains of Afghanistan or Pakistan. I understand the difference, but still there is a level of, a level of self-respect and self-discipline. And that's, yes, you restrain yourself from certain things, but the reward that you get, the satisfaction that you get is way more than what you lose. It is important for anyone. One of the lessons that we learned from that portion that we just studied, that you have to be patient with people. If you are an MSI or like you are a student associations president, or you talk Isoc, you work with your community in the masjid and imam, or tomorrow you work in company. Anyone who deal with public has to be patient. You go to public. Now we deal with public by just having a social media. You have to be patient with people. You have to let things go. Don't let it go to your heart. Also, keep in mind al-wara. Stay away from things that it might harm you in the akhirah. That's one of the reasons Abu Hanifa became so famous. By the way, Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, when it comes to ilm and knowledge, he's very knowledgeable in ilm, but as well as so many others. There is something more than just the information made these great scholars recognized and their names known and saved, and their history, and they were elevated very high. And one of it definitely is the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their taqwa, نحسبهم الله حسيبهم. Yahya ibn Qattan said, جالسنا والله أبي حنيفة وسمعنا منه وكنت والله إذا نظرت إليه عرفت في وجهه أنه يتقي الله. He said, Yahya al-Qattan, which is a great scholar of hadith, said, I attended Abu Hanifa's gathering. I was there in his gathering. I heard from him. Wallahi, when you look at his face, you know that this person fears Allah. His tongue is pure, doesn't say bad words. قيل سفيان الثوري, Sufyan al-Thawri is a great scholar from Al-Kufa. Sufyan al-Thawri, just for you to know, and I said this before, maybe in your message when you visited, Sufyan al-Thawri in his time, people look up to him the way they look up to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. That's how respectful he was. And people looking up to him like the way the Sahaba looked up to Abu Bakr. Sufyan al-Thawri, ما أبعد أبا حنيفة من الغيبة. Ibn al-Mubarak asked Sufyan al-Thawri, was Abu Hanifa someone who avoid backbiting? He said, I never heard him ever backbite anyone, even his own enemies. Huwa wallahi a'qal. He is much wiser and he's a smart person. He will not give his good deeds to someone else, because that's what you do when you backbite people. In the day of judgment, they will take your good deeds. One time he was told that somebody is speaking very ill of him. So he sent him a letter and he said, may Allah forgive you, my brother. وَكَلْتُكَ إِلَى مَنْ يَعْلَمُ مِنِّي خِلَافَ الَّذِي قُلْتَ عَنِّي. I will let you deal with the one who knows that I'm absolutely not the person that you are talking about. Not the person that you are claiming that I am, which he means Allah. He said, I will let you deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he knows that I'm completely different from what you think or what you're saying. That's all what he said to him. He was very generous, unbelievable generosity. And he gave not only his wealth, but his time. And this is important. Yani Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was not generous with money only. He was generous with time. He was generous with smile. He was generous with words. He was generous with his ilm. And that's something so important for us to learn when we deal with each other, especially if you want to be a leader, or you are a leader, especially if you are someone who cares about others. كان أبو حنيفة ربما مر به الرجل فيجلس إليه لغير قصد ولا مجالسة. Sometimes a person will come to Abu Hanifa and will sit with Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, not because seeking knowledge or anything like that. And they will get to know each other. Then after this person leaves, listen, so that's not a student, that's not a relative, that's not a close friend, just happened to see him once in the masjid, and he spent some time with him. Just imagine that. It happened that you took class with that person. You know, you had a short time of communication working together, then everybody apart. So when Abu Hanifa rahimahullah doesn't see him in the masjid or later on, Abu Hanifa will keep in contact. He will go visit him when he's sick, and he will go check on him. And if he needs help, he will help him, even though he only met him just for a short period of time, you know, just in a general socializing gathering, until they became good friends. They said, there is no one ever we sit at and we talk to, he was more respectful and gentleman than Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. He always respected his guests and honored them and treated them very, very well. He was a very faithful person. Again, this is for me more important than the information of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Abu Hanifa himself said that. That's why we study the history. He said, and to show you how faithful he is, he said, when my teacher died, Hamad, he said, I never prayed after that a prayer unless I make istighfar for my teacher and my father and my sujood. Then he said, and I always in my salah ask Allah to forgive anyone who taught me something or anyone that I taught. علمت أو تعلمت. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala used to say another good quality. He said, this is my opinion, and that's what I was able to arrive to. If someone bring me another proof and convince me with another proof that my opinion is wrong, I will follow him and I will leave my opinion. Yes, Anna. With all the knowledge that he has, with all the ability to debate. But again, when the truth presented to him, he will submit himself to it. He will not be arrogant to say no. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, once Harun al-Rashid asked, can you describe him to me? He asking who? Abu Hanifa's best student, Abu Yusuf. And he said he only speaks in religion in the area where he's sure and confident and have evidence to support his opinions in religion. He said he loves to see people obeying Allah. And the thing that hurts him the most when he see people disobeying Allah. He did not, run after the dunya. He was wealthy, but he never run after it. Tawil as-samt, he remained silent and always thinking. His knowledge is vast. He doesn't talk too much. If he has knowledge, he will speak. If he doesn't have, he will make analogy on another issue. He said, maybe can be similar to this. And he always tried to protect his religion and to protect his honor. He used to give from his wealth as well from his knowledge. I seen him not in need of anyone, but I seen people needs him. And he said, and one thing he never did, which is backbite anyone. He only mentioned people in goodness. He only mentioned good about people. Al-Rashid said, indeed, this is the character traits of righteous people. And he said to his katib, one of his the people around his secretary, he said, write these character traits and send it to my son so he can learn. This is the character trait that makes someone very special. His student Zufar, one of the students of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he said, I studied Abu Hanifa 20 years. I never seen anyone who cared about the public like him. And he truly cared about them and liked to advise them. He gave himself completely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His daytime is in teaching or learning and answering people questions, counseling people. And if he leaves the class, he will be going to visit a sick person or someone who is not feeling well, or he will be attending a janaza, a funeral, or he will go look after the poor and help them, or he will go visit a friend, or he will go intercede for someone who needs help. And when the night comes, he will be completely devoted to salah and reading Quran. That's how he was until he died. That's what I witnessed for 20 years in his company. Reflections. I make istighfar for those who taught me and I taught. What a great quality that you make dua for those who benefited you and those who benefited from you too, your students. What a great quality. For years, he praying for his sheikh. What a faithful. Today, see how some friends that you spend time with, some people that you even taught you, have done good to you, your own parents, you don't pray for them. You're not faithful to them. You're not grateful for them. When was the last time that you sincerely talked to your parents and said to them, you know what, Jazakallah khair. I never told you that, how much I really appreciate, Dad, what you have taught me. Yes, you're rough and tough on me sometimes, but you know what? There's a lot of things you have done for me. I love it when somebody grateful. I will never forget a brother who had a picture, him and his dad. And mashallah, he's taller than his dad. And his dad was looking at the picture, you know, and that's, I witnessed that. And the dad said, look at you, how mashallah, tall you are. Then the son immediately said, Baba, father, no matter how tall I am, I will always look up to you. That's a faithful son. Generosity is one of the greatest quality that ever any man or woman can possess. Today is very hard to find someone willing to say to you, you know what, if I see evidence different than my opinion, I will give up my opinion. It's so strange. I'm not talking even about religious opinions. I'm talking about opinions in politics, opinions about political positions, or opinions related to, you know, any matter. People are so strict about it, and that's my way or the highway. There's a difference between a scholar who learned the knowledge because he loves people, he wants to help people, and someone, al-ilm for them is just a vehicle. It's just a vehicle that they can reach dunya, they can make money. I will never forget. A brother called me once and said, Sheikh, I have a 20 young imams or young students who are studying Islamic studies in different Muslim countries, and they come in the summer. So I made this, you know, a group of 20 of them when they come in the summer for the summer vacation, so they can tour the country and give lectures and stuff like that. I said, wow, it's a great idea. That's very excellent training and blah, blah, you know. Then he said to me, I have a question for you. You can imagine, I'm so excited now. He's going to ask me what they should teach, what kind of idea that I can give him. You know, that's wallahi the thing I'm going to ask him now. Hey, you should pair them with someone who have a lot of experience as an imam, some student knowledge. Let them do some joint lectures with senior mashayikh so they can learn from them, and then shaykh introduce them. I'm thinking about all these things. And all of a sudden he told me, Sheikh, what do you think, how much they should charge? That's it. That's why those people never make it. I can guarantee you. People have forgotten. Imam Malik rahimahullah said when he was told, there is many books in Muwatta were written after your Muwatta. People write it to show to the Khalifa. And he said, whatever for Allah will remain. Tell me today what other Muwatta book that we know. Zufar said, I was with Abu Hanifa 20 years. And by the way, Zufar is a great scholar. Zufar is not just a kid attending Abu Hanifa. Zufar, at that time, he's a scholar and sheikh. For 20 years, he's in the company of his sheikh. Today, you tell the students, you tell them, oh, I attend Sheikh Waleed couple of lectures. Khalas, I attend like a Maghrib classes, 2 or 3 Maghrib classes. I'm done. I'm not going to go again. Why? I did like 2, 3 classes. You know, I attend with Sheikh Abu Isa, this, I attend with the Sheikh Ahmed, whatever, you know, I attended those. I listen to 4 or 5 lectures, and I'm done. That's 20 years. It's so important that education should be combined by a character trait and combined by something very important, which is not only you have a good relationship with people, but first and foremost, your relationship with Allah. In Qiyam al-Layl, Hasan al-Layl, can I describe you, my brothers and sisters, as Hasan al-Layl, yani your night is good? Is your night better than your daytime? Is your night something that you're proud of? Or it is mostly sleeping? Or it is mostly watching? He saw Anas ibn Malik, but he didn't hear any hadith from him, according to what the ulama, rahimahullah, said. There's a whole debate, did he ever hear from Sahabi or not about this? He saw them, but did he hear from them? Most of the hadith would say no. But he definitely heard the hadith from the greatest imams among the tabi'een, the successor, rahimahullah ta'ala. You might be surprised. Abu Hanifa, by the way, in the beginning of his life, was not dedicated for knowledge. Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, in the beginning of his knowledge, he was not dedicated. You know, he was in business. He used to go to the souk to buy and sell, and he was busy with his father's business, and he was not like into the knowledge. He himself said, one day I was going to the souk, and Shabi saw me. Shabi is a great scholar of Al-Kufa. And he was sitting on the way. So he called me, and I came. He said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to the souk. I'm going to the market. He said, no, who do you go to? He said, I go to my store in the market. Then he said, no, I don't mean who do you go to in the market. Who do you go to learn the knowledge? And he said, oh, I don't really care much. I very, very rarely I go to learn whoever in the masjid. Sometimes I attend just a lecture, random thing. Then he said to me, Shabi, he said, don't be heedless. Look for the scholars and their gathering and spend time with them. I see signs of intelligence in you. You look smart. Abu Hanifa said, when he said that to me, it hit my heart. Then he said, I start not going much to the market anymore, and I start putting much more of my time towards the masjid, and I start seeking the knowledge. And that's what directed me to seek knowledge. I said he used to sell silk and stuff like that. And by the way, as he grow older and his money grow and his ilm grow, his taqwa grow. One time a woman came to him and she said, how much this worth? You know, it's a garment that she has. How much would you buy it for? Then he said, how much you want for it? She said, 100. I'll be happy with it. He said, I think it's worth more than 100. Now he is the one who's going to buy it. He said, I think it's worth more than 100. Then she said, okay, 200. MashaAllah, she's very interesting. She goes 100% double. Then he said, I think it's worth more than 200. She said, 300. Then he said, I think it's worth more than 300. She said, he said, 400. 400. He said, I still think it can get you more than 400. She said, please don't mock me. You know, it looks like you don't want to buy it for 400. You're just making me go up in price, and you just making fun of me. He said, no, I might not buy it, but hold on. Then he went and he got someone, and he said, hey, look at this garment. What do you think of it? And he purchased it from her for 500 dirham. He didn't take a commission or anything. He could have took it from her for 100 and sold it for 500 and it'd be halal 100%. But that's not how he is. He is worried about winning the woman more than winning her money. And that's a great lesson that we should learn in our life. Winning people is more important than winning, many other things that we look for. Another lesson from this story of Shabi. Sometimes we don't know how our words can change people's life. He told him, I see you're intelligent, you better to be a sheikh and go to seek knowledge than just go into the market. You don't know. Just a small advice like this to a young man, it might change that person's life. You know, Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, you all know Ibn Kathir, the great Mufassir. Do you know why he cares about ilm, talab al-ilm? Once he wrote something and his sheikh saw his handwriting and he said, this is the handwriting of a student of knowledge. He said, that hit my heart and I committed myself to knowledge after that. You don't know. Don't be stingy with your words. Say these positive words of encouragement. Like Abu Hanifa, in the beginning, he was interested in philosophy and stuff like that. And one day he had an issue of a woman that her husband divorced her. He didn't know how to answer it. He thought he has knowledge until he go to his sheikh, and his sheikh Hamad told him what's the answer. He said, after that, I realized that just this philosophy and you know, the theological debate that's involved in it is really don't benefit me much. And he said, I started learning the fiqh, and his Sheikh Hamad took care of him and he used to teach him. And he studied with Hamad ibn Abi Sulaiman more than 18 years, rahimahullah ta'ala. You can imagine 18 years have shaped Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala. And sometimes he said, I spent 10 years, more than 10 years, which is 18 years. It's interesting. Once Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, said, after 10 years of studying with him, I was thinking, maybe I should have my own class now. You know, I've been 10 years, maybe I should start my own class in more school. He said, so what happened, Hamad ibn Sulaiman, rahimahullah ta'ala, a woman who died in Al-Basra, he was in Kufa, she doesn't have inheritors. So Hamad ibn Sulaiman decided to go to study to Al-Basra to basically get the money and the inheritance and come back. Then he said to Abu Hanifa, you sit here and you take my place. Can you imagine the sheikh sometimes, Muhammad ibn Sulaiman, he used to make Abu Hanifa sit next to him in the chair, not with the students, within the chair, just out of respecting and honoring. And he wanted to encourage this young man. So when he left, he became in charge. Then he said, I stayed, and at that time he was 30 years old, okay, or around 30 years old. Then people start coming. He basically, he stayed about 3 months. It took him 3 months to go and to come back. In 3 months, he got exposed to so many questions and fatawa he never heard of it before. And he said, I used to answer the answers that, especially the new question, I documented it. So when he came back about 2 months later and asked, I showed him 60 fatwas I give, 60 answers. He agreed with me in 40 and disagreed with 20. And he showed me why I was wrong in 20 of them. That's still very good, 40 to 20, you know. But guess what? He said, at this point, I realized that I'm not ready yet. And I'm not going to leave the sheikh until he died. There's a great lessons we can learn direct from there. It's important for teachers to take care of the students. If you're a senior in college, take care of the younger one. If you're in college, take care of the high schooler. If you're in high school, take care of the younger one, middle school. We have to take care of each other. We have to encourage one another. We have to advance one another. It's such a shame that we don't inspire people to grow. It doesn't mean that they became mufti and sheikh, but, you know, give them the respect, give them the support, let them talk and correct them. Let them write and review what they write. And for the young people, don't disconnect yourself with your teachers. You know, adults are not your enemies. Older are not your enemies. And they should not be. We should be all on the same side. It is natural for Abu Hanifa to say, I want to have my own class, I have my own school, I want to be like independent Shia. It's natural, but you have to control that. You have to make sure you channel it in the right way. And you have to be honest with yourself, like Abu Hanifa rahimahullah did. He stayed with Hamad ibn Sulaiman 18 years. You know, and I'm amazed. 40 he got correct, and 20 he disagreed with him. You know what? He didn't say, after that, what he said? He said, I need to study more. He didn't say, you know what, I got 40 correct. This attitude is not the good attitude. It's a good attitude. It built confidence in him, but also make him want to learn more and more and more. Anyway, he saw a dream in his early time that he was digging the Prophet's grave. He got scared, and he asked someone in the Basra to interpret the dream. So Ibn Sirin rahimahullah said, this is the dream of someone who will dig in the hadith of the Prophet and bring beautiful meanings out of it. He will bring so much knowledge of the Prophet's hadith. What a great interpretation of that dream. He was tested a lot during the Umayyads and the Abbasis. After the Abbasi collapse, Ibn Hubayra, the Wali of Iraq, remained, even though the Abbasiyin took over. Anyway, and during the Umayyad times of Ibn Hubayra was well known, he tried to make Abu Hanifa judge. He refused. He hit him. He lashed his back in public 110 or 100 times, 10 every day. And it is so 110, 10 every day. And after that, he still said no. He let him go. Again, in the Abbasi time, the Khalifa told him, I wanted to be a judge. He said, I'm not a good judge. He said, Wallahi, you are a good judge. He said, Wallahi, I'm not a good judge. So the assistants of the Khalifa said, are you out of your mind? The Khalifa saying, Wallahi, and you say Wallahi against him? He said, yes. He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, if I say, I'm telling you I'm not a good judge, I can't be a good judge. If I'm saying the truth, you're not allowed to put me, because I tell you I'm not qualified. And if I'm lying to you, so that means I'm not qualified, because a liar cannot be a judge. So either way, you have to let me go. He was so angry at him, and he locked him up, and he died, rahimahullah ta'ala, in jail. And he said he did not really lock him up because he lied or doesn't want to be just the judge. He said he took this, and he knew that Abu Hanifa will not accept that, and that's Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. He did this, and he put him in jail until he died. Abu Hanifa died in jail by the hand of Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. And he actually did this because he was worried that Abu Hanifa will support a revolution that was going at that time called Harakat al-Nafs al-Zakiyya, that he will support them financially. He has a lot of money, and he can support them financially, and just his name to be thrown there. And he was in support of that revolution against the early stage of the Abbasis. So they crushed all their enemies. And it was said, actually, Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was giving a drink has a poison. So when Abu Hanifa brought it near to him, he said, he smelled the poison. He said, I'm not going to drink that. That's a poison. If I drink it, I'm killing myself, and that's haram. So they put him down. They put his hand down, the guards. They opened his mouth by force, and they poured the drink in his mouth, and he died. And they claimed that he just died in the in jail. And he was in his 70s, rahimahullah ta'ala, 150 Hijri. His life is a lot to be said. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah did not reach that level until he was tested. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah was asked, would the person become an imam, then he will be tested, or he will be tested, then become an imam? He said, no, the person will be tested first, then he become an imam. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ. They became imams after they experienced patience, after they been through that struggle. That's why Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah used to say, as Ibn al-Qayyim Madarij Salikin said, I heard my Sheikh saying several times, بِالصَّبْرِ وَالْيَقِينِ تُنْهَلُ الْإِمَامَةُ بِالدِّينِ. Through patience and ilm, you will become an imam in the deen. You will become a leader in religion. Shafi'i rahimahullah, when he said that, he said, look at Nuh, look at Ibrahim, look at Musa, look at Isa, look at Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They did not reach that level of ulil azm min al-rusul. Why they are ulil azm al-rusul? Because they were tested so hard. So hard. That's why Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said, don't think ever that you will be free of pain and challenges and tests. He said, this will be different from one person to another. According to the hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, people will be tested according to their deen. And the test is not, by the way, only to be thrown in jail or to be tortured. Test can be family members. Test can be students. Test can be sexual desires. Test can be wealth. Test can be peer pressure. Test can be good or bad. نبلوكم بالشر والخير. Allah said in Surah Al-Anbiya, we test you with things that's good and bad. Imam Ahmad was tortured in jail. Then when he came out and the new Khalifa turned around and they honored him, they sent gift and money to his son. When he saw the gift and food and clothes and the money, he said, these are worse than jail and the torture in jail. This is worse fitna. So anyway, Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, no doubt, have left behind him a great legacy. Some people said Abu Hanifa didn't leave much books. He left Musnad, and there's also another book attributed to him, Al-Fiqh Al-Akbar. But I tell you what Abu Hanifa rahimahullah left. He left behind him great students, like Ibrahim ibn Tahman. You know, Imam Ahmad, when Ibrahim Tahman was mentioned, and Ahmad was like, just relaxing. Somebody said Ibrahim Tahman. He almost said, his son said, Father, as if he just walked in. He said, I just mentioned his name. He said, son, someone like Ibrahim al-Tahman to be mentioned, and you just like lying like this, it's disrespect. He's among the righteous people. That was not but a student of Abu Hanifa. Zufar, one of the greatest alim, rahimahullah ta'ala. That's also the outcome of Abu Hanifa. Abu Yusuf al-Qadi. Do you guys know that Abu Yusuf al-Qadi comes from a very poor family? And Abu Yusuf, his father used to make him work on the market. So now Abu Hanifa doing the favor, doing what Shabi said, but in another way. So Abu Yusuf was going to the work in the market. Guess what? Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, son, where are you going? Why don't you come to the class? He said, I have to work. My father said, I cannot go to the class anymore because I work. I make money. I'm the one who support the family. This is how much you make. Then Abu Yusuf told him, that's how much I make. Then Abu Hanifa rahimahullah gave the same amount of money and more to Abu Yusuf's father. He sponsors Abu Yusuf for about 20 years. 20 years, about 20 years, he is paying for him every month. He giving money to the family so they can let Abu Yusuf study. Right investment. Invest in people more than buildings. And Abu Yusuf, everybody knows who is Abu Yusuf rahimahullah. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah left behind a legacy of great fiqh, fatawa, ilm, the greatest and the biggest and the largest madhab today. Not only that, it has to be books and tapes and lectures. And what spread his knowledge? His students. What made Abu Hanifa so special, very quickly, in a couple of minutes we'll finish this, his commitment to ibadah, his commitment to combine between knowledge and actions. He was like, he prays a lot, make tawaf a lot, read Quran a lot, rahimahullah ta'ala. They said he used to read the Quran, maybe there is a little exaggeration, 40 years he prayed, never slept. That's not, it's exaggeration. But it means he prays most of the night. He make khatm al-Quran every night in his prayer. That's exaggeration. Maybe he did it several times, but not every day for 40 years. Okay. Anyway, when someone said he makes 70,000 khatm al-Quran. Okay. So that's just logically cannot be possible. Why? 70,000 khatmat means he lived 200 years. Every day in his life, from day 1 to day 200, he will make khatm al-Quran one time. That's just impossible. So this is exaggeration. So we have to be also critical thinker when we read the paragraph of the scholars. He cares for da'wah, he cares for ilm, he cares for ibadah. You have to combine between these three. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, Imam in al-Wara, and I told you before, az-zuhd, as-sari. And that's important, that's quality. One of the quality about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he has diverse type of shuyukh. He studied under the students, or before Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, there was a schools of fiqh. one in Medina, one in Mecca, one in Hijaz. Okay, so Ibn Abbas, the student of Abbas, Abu Hanifa, he studied under them. He studied under the student of Ibn Umar in Medina and Ibn Mas'ud in Al-Kufa. And these are different schools, different thought. That diversity made him very well thoughtful, very knowledgeable. The hadith and the riwayah and the fiqh and the qira'at. He studied with Asim ibn Nujud. Anyway, Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala was a wealthy person. He's financially stable. When you're financially stable, you can accomplish a lot. And that's an important lesson for us too. But never money was a master for him. Money was just a good servant. And money is a very good servant and a very corrupt master. Also, have a very high sense of confidence and self-respect. Didn't get, intimidated by people's talk or curse or bad. He doesn't go to their level. He kept his dignity, rahimahullah ta'ala. And also confidence. Once he was in Masjid al-Khayf in Mecca, in Hajj, he said something, then somebody told him, Al-Hasan al-Basri. And who's Al-Hasan al-Basri? Al-Hasan al-Basri is the greatest scholar of his time. He said, he disagreed with you. He said something different than what you said. Then Abu Hanifa said, Akhta al-Hasan. Hasan is wrong. Then he said, Al-Hasan is wrong. And he cursed him with his mother, like you, the son of whatever. Okay? Abu Hanifa did not change. That's in the Masjid al-Khayf in Mecca. Then he said, Wallah. Al-Hasan al-Basri is wrong and Ibn Mas'ud is correct. Which is, his opinion is following Ibn Mas'ud's opinion. The guy came down. Calm down. Anyway, there's no time. I wish that I have time. Abu Hanifa, it was not fair to talk about him 40 minutes. This is like a great life, 70 years filled of knowledge and contributions. But his quality, special quality in him, his ability to debate, his ability to articulate, he doesn't get bored by people back and forth. He has a lot of debates with people, students and ulama, and you can see he's very patient with that. And that's very important. Don't get too angry. Don't get too, quickly to lose your patience in your school. Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, Imam fil fiqh, Imam fil shi'r, is a poet, recognizing the scholars of the opinions to the extent Shafi, rahimahullah, said, الناس عيال على أبي حنيفة في الفقه. Everybody comes in fiqh after Abu Hanifa like a child, comparing to Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. And Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, even though there is a whole talk about him being in hadith weak narrator, his memory in hadith is not as good, but that's not something surprising. There is some of the Qurra al-Quran, mashahir, when it comes to hadith, they are not very strong in memorization. But when it comes to fiqh, they are very good. Qira'at al-Quran are good. In Sirah wal Maghazi, fi Sirah, they are very good. But when they narrate the hadith and the isnad, they mix up and things like that. That's why the ulama who criticize, it doesn't reduce his level. He's still one of the greatest scholars in Islam, rahimahullah ta'ala. And there is no need for the Hanafi to be very, angry at those who said that, because also you cannot insult great other scholars like Al-Bukhari or Muslim and others who criticize this part of Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. It's not a perfect person. He was a great scholar, but he's not infallible. He has mistakes like others. That's why he said, rahimahullah, take from what I take. Don't just take my, and if you find something against what I said, leave what I said. He was very independent persons, not scholars who controlled by government, controlled by, people of wealth or people of special interest, very dedicated to the public. That's why he got in trouble a lot with the government, because he stood up for the truth, stood us against the, he joined many of, and this is area he might be criticized for it a little bit. Some people didn't like about it, but in the end of the day, he stood up for what he thinks is correct, even if this is cost him to be put in jail and cost him his life in the end of his life, rahimahullah ta'ala. He has a great story with Malik, rahimahullah. Abu Hanifa, I think, that's my theory, one of the reasons there is a lot of like misconceptions and rumors about him, many things. First of all, envy. Number two, also the political animosity that he created with the government. It led people to spread a lot of maybe lies about him. And that's why you see many scholars heard things about him and said very harsh statement against Abu Hanifa. But many of them, when they met Abu Hanifa, like Al-Awza'i said very terrible things about Hanifa. He said, Abu Hanifa, this is a man who destroyed Islam. Okay? He is khabith, is this. But when Abdullah ibn Mubarak heard that, Abdullah ibn Mubarak started telling Al-Awza'i, look at this. And he read the statements and fatwas. He said, whoever gives these fatwas, he's a great scholar. He told him, that's Abu Hanifa that you talked bad about him last night. He said, Astaghfirullah, I was told something else. You know, Malik had a problem with Abu Hanifa in the beginning. And Awza'i, when they met him in Medina and they debated with him, they both admit that he's a great scholar. So there's a lot of rumors about him, and that should not reduce. Yes, there is a mistakes. There is clear points that we think it is something that there is excessive use for al-qiyas and stuff like that. There's reasons for it. There's justification, but at the end of the day, al-athar is much stronger way. But Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, it is false to think that Abu Hanifa is not someone who cared for the hadith, is not someone who cared for the athar. He is actually was, radiyallahu anhu rahimah. And if you look at his musnad, if you look at his answers, it's all based on athar, it's all based on hadith. He always said that the hadith is above my head. But also, rahimahullah ta'ala, he dealt with a lot of new issues, and he used a lot of qiyas and issues that he didn't know that exist. But definitely he was not someone that he's against the athar and riwayah and hadith. That's just simply false, and it was used to turn people away from madhab Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. And when you see reaction like this, you get another reaction, which is the follower of Abu Hanifa became very reacted in a very extreme way, to the extent somebody said when Isa alayhi salam will come in the day of judgment, in the end of the days, he will follow the Hanafi madhab. He will rule by the Hanafi madhab. Some people said that there is no one have more blessed in this ummah after Muhammad sallallahu to the ummah of Muhammad except Abu Hanifa, more than Abu Hanifa. Yani Rasulullah than Abu Hanifa. Everybody else is not. Some people are very extreme. Some people said any opinion that go against what Abu Hanifa said, it's any hadith is either weak or abrogated. Any opinion is rejected. So Abu Hanifa is correct, and everybody. فَلَعْنَةُ رَبِّنَا أَعْدَادُ رَمْلٍ عَلَى مَنْ خَالَفَ قَوْلَ أَبِي حَنِيفَ. May Allah curse everybody who disagrees with Abu Hanifa, as many as there is a grain of sand on the face of the earth. This extremes. And when you have these type of extremes, it creates, both sides. What we should know, learn from this lesson, we should not be extreme. We should treat scholars as means, not goals. They are the way to show you the truth, lead you to the truth. They are not the truth themselves. The ulama, their statements need evidence, but their statement not evidence in itself. It's not correct in itself. It's correct because of what is based on an ilm. And we have to understand, to respect the diversity. Abu Hanifa himself, his students disagree with him. Abu Yusuf changed many of Abu Hanifa's opinion. Muhammad Hassan Shaybani, same thing. In the Hanafi madhab, you find multiple opinions. So that rigid mentality that it means I'm just stuck with one opinion, that's not how he was, he promoted, or his students were. Abu Hanifa was upon that way of Ahl Sunnah al Jama'ah. If there's anything criticized in Aqidah Ma'ar Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, things that's not correct. They accuse him that he said Al-Quran is created, and he didn't. He said clearly, whoever said that is not Muslim, rahimahullah. He has a problem with the irja, some of the irja issues, which is the definition of Imam. But in the end of the day, Abu Hanifa's opinion is very, 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 very much go aligned with the rest of Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah when it comes to the issue of al-irja and the relationship between faith and good deeds. Finally, the issue of rebelling against unjust ruler, and this is one of the things that the ulama rahimahullah criticize him for. But with all this, kafa bil mar'i nublan, and if you can count some of the issues that people disagree with him and take it against him, he's a noble person. Because most of people, you can't even count their mistakes. There are too many. Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, is one of the greatest imam, one of the greatest scholars, rahimahullah, that we had in history. A person who stood up for the truth, did not fear anyone more than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise his level in Jannatul Na'im and gather us with him in Jannatul Na'im with the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the ulama of our ummah. And it's such a pleasure for me to speak about one of the greatest scholars, rahimahullah ta'ala. When he died, they said that they made the janazah prayer on him 6 times because of the amount of people attend the janazah. Rahimahullah ta'ala. هذا وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد. Thank you very much for having me.
Sheikh, we will now move on to the Q&A. Okay, so first question, why did Imam Abu Hanifa turn down the chief judge post offered by Al-Mansur?
Because he was believing that there is a lot of injustice going on in that government, and he liked to stay independent. I mean, accepting the judge is, not everybody cut for it. Not everybody, the ulama rahimahullah, have, some of them participated in government, some of them did not participate in government. And those who participated in government among the scholars and ulama, they thought that they can do good, they can reduce evil. So that's why I don't think it is correct for our society today is to generalize and say, hey, everybody, let's say, work with the government, he's a bad person. The good position is just to avoid them. That's not true. There's a lot of ulama, rahimahullah, accept positions in government and were respected, and they had a lot of good influence. Just an example, Rabi' al-Ra'i, for example, the Sheikh of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, and so many. And some said no, they avoided. They didn't like to be part of it, especially those who are independent and they have their own like wealth and they don't need that. They never cared for that. Also, another thing that a lot of people don't want to be judged, because when you become a judge, that separates you from society. If you become a judge, immediately 50% of society don't like you because you judge 4 people against people. When you're a da'iyah, when you're a sheikh, when you're a mufti, when you're a scholar, when you are like someone who's like interact with people and love to be with the public, you don't want to be a judge because you want to win people.
Okay, next question. How can one increase their wisdom, and how do you become better at judging?
If you increase your wisdom, Imam Umar Abdul Aziz rahimahullah said, if you want to be an intelligent and wise person, be in the company of intelligent and wise people. Number 2, read a lot. Knowledge. Wisdom is the result of knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the more experience, the more knowledge you read, the more history you read, the more you know culture, and the more diverse you are, the more wise you will be.
If you have backbited someone and they take your good deeds away on the last day, can you apologize to them or talk good of them?
Yeah, you can apologize to them, but don't tell them. Just make dua and make sincere tawbah, and inshallah Allah will forgive you. But if you're going to tell them, and this will cause more harm, don't. No, ya rahimahullah, in the opinion of, you should not tell someone that I backbite. But you ask for someone, hey, forgive me if I ever said anything about you. Just general statement like
that. This person is saying they've done countless sins in the past 2 decades, and they're sure that Allah will forgive them, but it still feels so much weight. What should they do?
Everybody feel that pain. But you know what? That pain should be a reason for you need to keep going, to learn from my mistakes. It should not hold me down. It shouldn't put me down. That pain should be a positive energy, and change it to be a positive energy inside your mind and your heart.
How can one develop their eloquence over time?
Read a lot, practice, join some of these public speaking clubs, writing is a great way of expressing yourself. It helps you to know how to express yourself. Then saying it is another step. Reading, read good books, not just Facebook. Read, write good, articles, articulate points, research and stuff like that.
Considering Imam Abu Hanifa began formally seeking knowledge at around 22, can we do the same as young adults and become alims?
Sure. I'll end with this because I have to go. Al-Kasa'i, rahimahullah, one of the greatest scholars of his time, okay? His name is Imam Al-Kasa'i. He was once walking and he saw a mom with her a mother of his son. And she was taking him to the school, Kutab, to study. And the son want to play. And I don't want to go on fighting, throwing a fist. So the mom said, hey, you have to go to school and you have to look to learn. You don't want to end up like this. And she pointed to Al-Kasa'i. Al-Kasa'i at that time was a shepherd, has some sheep and come with them back from the desert. She said, you're going to end up like that. You want to learn so you can be, have a good future. Then Kasai said, I look at myself, I said, I became the example of the bad outcome, like if someone gave an example for a loser, that would be me. And he said, I said that day, I'm not going to be that loser anymore. So I decided to learn. And he became one of the greatest scholars in Arabic language, in Qira'at. Just read who's al-Kasai, rahimahullah. Guess what? He was 40 years old at that time. And I just 2 weeks ago, I talked to a group of people in England, in Birmingham. You can look at that lecture online. It has a lot of stories about people who start their knowledge, seeking knowledge and changing, and much older than 20s, It is your life, have control over it. So you can look for that online. And it's a good lecture in regard to this specific point. Hey, thank you very much. I have to go. Sorry for the rest of the people who couldn't answer the questions, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you guys, and hopefully inshallah there will be another opportunity for us to meet and to talk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Oh Allah the Almighty, Allah, Allah, protect